Hello everybody, welcome to this week's episode of The County Seat. I'm your host, Chad Booth. We're going to be talking about grandmas today, two different kinds. Later in the show, we'll be talking about the legal grandma, G-R-A-M-A, that's the Government Records Access and Management Act. Now that created quite a stir in the legislative session this year because the legislators tried to amend the Grandma Act. And the public's general reaction to it was that they were trying to move to an era of backroom deals and special secret meetings, and they wanted to make government records private. But the issue is much broader than that, and it takes different areas. So rather than talk about House Bill 477 that created all that stir, we want to talk about the original grandma law and what the implications of it are and what kinds of problems it creates for the county. We will get to that in just a minute. Right now we want to talk about your grandma. People who get older often need a little assistance. And that's one of the roles county government plays with its aging services. Here with that story is Susan Wood.
Driving. It's a simple act that many of us take for granted. What would happen if all of a sudden your privileges were taken away? In fact, what if all of a sudden you were unable to care for yourself? That's a situation that many seniors face. But luckily, there's a place for them to turn.
Aging Services is the local area agency on aging. These are agencies that are set up across the country. They were set up beginning in 1965 with the passage of the Older Americans Act. And they serve really as focal points in the community for people to come to and have their questions answered on everything A to Z about aging.
These are people that live in our communities, that have a lot of born and raised in our communities and are still trying to stay in the communities. But in order for them to stay in the community, they're going to need some services, whether it's in their home or whether it's the community-based services through the centers. They just need some help on a day-to-day basis.
In Utah, about 80% of elderly individuals in need are actually cared for by neighbors, family, and friends. The other 20% rely on Aging Services, the government program that focuses on taking care of the elderly who otherwise would have nowhere else to turn for help with even the simple things in life. Aging Services provides assistance like Meals on Wheels, transportation to doctor's appointments, shopping, even coming in and doing laundry, whatever is needed to help make life easier. The purpose of Aging Services goes beyond meals and the occasional house cleaning, though. Financially, it makes sense both for the individuals receiving help and counties as well.
Just some services to help stay in their homes, keep them out of the long-term care facilities, because that's really their only option. For $3,000 or $4,000 a year, we can keep a senior in their home where it's, as much as $5,000 to $6,000 a month to be one in a long-term care facility. So one way or the other, we end up paying, and so a few dollars on the front end to keep them in their home saves us a lot of dollars on the back end.
The money that funds Aging Services in Utah comes from the Older Americans Act, federal dollars, which are then matched by the state and by the county providing the service on the ground. Like everything else in federal, state, and local budgets, the Aging Services funding is being stretched, forcing some, like Rich County Commissioner Bill Cox, to look to the future with concern.
We're going to see an increased population, and we're not seeing an increase in funding. In fact, we're seeing a decrease in funding. Number one, services become more costly to provide. For example, gasoline. As it makes a jump, that's going to cost more for the transportation.
Costs are expected to double by 2020, but even so, the administrators and volunteers behind Aging Services vow to never turn their backs on those most in need. Budgets may be tight, but the cost of doing nothing would be far greater. Officials understand that fact all too well.
People, again, have, I think, kind of a preconceived notion about government, about a huge faceless bureaucracy and how difficult it is to get in, and I got to pay my tax dollars and I want these services. Well, the great thing about aging is that you make one telephone call and you're going to have access into a continuum of services, into a wide variety of different things.
If you or a loved one needs more information about Aging Services, just contact your county office. For the county seat, I'm Susan Wood. Back to you, Chad.
Was that directed at me, Susan? Was that a hint? Well, listen, if you would like to find out more information about aging services, it is one of the great things that the county provides. Well, stay with us on the County Seat. We're going to be talking about your other grandma when we come back. That's the Government Records Access and Management Act and the controversy that has created. We'll be back in just a minute with the County Seat.
Native Americans called it the land of the sleeping rainbow. It's a place of unparalleled enchantment where history, splendor, and industry meet. We call it Sevier County. Experience the Paiute Trail by ATV. Explore 7 national parks, all within a few hours' drive. Gaze down at the world from an entirely new perspective. Join us in Sevier County and discover real Utah. Come, explore the Paiute Trail and beyond.
The State of Utah School and Institutional Trust Lands Administration. SITLA manages 3.5 million acres of Utah lands with the express purpose of furthering the education of Utah students while promoting local industry, oil and gas, even residential development, all at the same time. Through the careful use of trust lands, we distributed more than $22 million to Utah schools last year. The State of Utah School and Institutional Trust Lands Administration, building the state's permanent school fund.
What do you picture when you hear Rich County, Utah? Winter adventure? Snowmobile action? Pristine skiing? Spectacular solitude? Well, if that isn't what first came to mind, then you just don't know Rich County. Snowmobiling Monte Cristo, ice fishing Bear Lake, skiing the backcountry. Come and find out what you never knew you were missing. Rich County, Utah.
If you look up epic in the dictionary, it's defined as heroic, majestic, or impressively great. Here in Kane County, Utah, we don't need a dictionary to tell us that. We live it every day. Stop reading about life and start experiencing it in Kane County. ATV adventures, jeep excursions, hike a world where the Old West was yesterday and tomorrow is just over the horizon. Kane County, Utah, where epic is more than just a word, it's our way of life.